My article was about the impact of stability balls, activity breaks, and a sedentary classroom on standardized math scores. So the study was based out of Minnesota, and they were all 6th grade students, and some were regular ed and some were special ed. They were just included into a regular classroom setting. And what they did was, each teacher that was involved, they taught the same curriculum, the same lessons, same everything, but the only thing that was different is that one teacher included the use of stability balls, one did activity breaks, and one was they did just straight up teaching. They didn't do anything specific related to physical activity. And what the ones that did the study found, that the use of activity breaks surprisingly didn't have effect on the standardized test scores. And neither did the teacher that just kept everything the same. The thing that really impacted it was the use of the stability balls. So what this looks like with the activity, though, is before and then even sometimes after the math lesson, the teachers would get everyone up and, like, for example, they would be asked to do jumping jacks. Well, a student would roll the dice, and then if it landed on a 5, let's say, then the students would all have to do 5 jumping jacks, and they'd go through little things like that, and then they would get to their learning. But with the use of stability balls, what they did is they didn't change anything else other than they were sitting on these stability balls the entire time. And so what the researchers found is that the constant little movements of the students rocking back and forth or bouncing up and down, just the consistency of the physical activity is what allowed their test scores to be higher compared to everything else. Whereas with the students that did the activity breaks, it was a sudden burst all at once, and then they just sat there in the regular chairs. So I thought that was pretty interesting to think about. And these are 6th graders too, so their energy levels are pretty high right now, and I just thought it was interesting to think about, and that it also was tested amongst students with disabilities and those without. So that being said, I went to teach special education, and my goal is to teach in elementary. And I at first think about the students who they need to redirect their energy elsewhere. So I've seen in some of the classrooms I've been a part of where they use like little fidget things. Some of them might be like a stress ball or some putty or things like that, just to redirect the energy that's built up in them and releasing it through their hand movements. And that greatly affects a student's ability to concentrate and their behavior and their worth ethics and overall their grade, because they're exporting that energy that's built up through their hands. So with the stability balls, this makes me think this would be the same concept, but they're releasing it through the movement of their legs, or just in general the lower torso of their body. So they could be able to jump up, like bounce up and down gently throughout the whole time and not be distracted. Because if it gets to the point where it's distracting, then there's an issue and it needs to be taken away. In my classroom, I would use those for sure. I also think I would like to implicate like the different uses of things similar to stability balls, like the standing desk with the rocking thing underneath sometimes, or the sitting desk with the rocking thing underneath sometimes. There's like the wobble stools, or sometimes students don't even want a desk. I've seen like the modern classrooms where they're just hanging out on the floor doing their work, and that's okay. So I think it'd be interesting to do a study like this, but with the different kinds of redirecting of their energy and their movement, and see like what happens. How does that affect learning in your classroom? So I would probably do that at some point, and just to see what works best with my students, you know, because what works for one might not work at all for the other, and it could be a distraction. Because if we just automatically assume that the stability balls are going to work for everybody, we're going to find the one student it's more distracting than it is anything else. So then we're going to have to take it away. So I think it's important to get to know your students, know what they're about, and know like what triggers them, knows like just what benefits them, and use that before implementing anything. Just because, you know, a certain test says, yes, this is what works, but I need to remember, and we all need to remember, that this may not work for everybody. But the study does show that it does work, and it does improve the test scores. So I think it's something to consider, and I think it's a great article, and I'll definitely implicate these to my classroom, but I think I'll also use activity breaks still too. Nothing says they're wrong, but brain breaks are great. Just think the constant motion is also what's important. And I think it'd be interesting because in this article they mentioned that they don't test this theory on the other content areas, and I think it'd be interesting to see if that helps the standardized scores in those areas as well, and see how it relates to math, if it's just the critical thinking aspect of math or where it helps, or what the connection is. So overall, it was a good article, and it was interesting to read from a special education standpoint. So.